welcome to the second panel we have today. It's about one of the hottest topics concerning Europe directly, and almost every day brings us something new. I'm going to co-lead this panel with Sylvie Kaufmann from Le Monde, and among our guests is Adam Garfinkel from the American Interest, Asle Toje from Norwegian Nobel Institute, Ulrike Guérot from European Democracy Lab, Adam Daniel Rotfeld, the University of Warsaw, and Robert Cooper. For the very first time since a long time, we have a situation when the Europe split according to some unknown pattern that we tend to call the pattern East-West. Yesterday there was a conference given by François Hollande, and he said, as a threat, that if quotas for immigrants are not going to be accepted by, in particular by Eastern Europeans, the Schengen Treaty will blow up. Are we ready to give up Schengen?
First of all, for me, is the question whom you have in mind saying we. We Europeans, we leaders of Europe, we the functionaries or representatives of the European Union. Altogether, I don't know. We are at the moment in very turbulent world, which is described as being interdependent on one hand, contested on the other hand, and very complex. And I should say that politicians, without this type of intellectual input, are not able to digest properly what does it mean.
It's true that the European Union always, to me, gives an impression of creating powerful institutions and then making sure that they don't quite work. But in the long term, they do work. In the long term, this is a community of law, and in the long term, the laws that are set ultimately win. So it takes a long time, but actually the logic of the institutions so far has proved very strong. In Britain, what is striking is the way in which the government has been forced, actually by public opinion, to take more refugees. It's not what you expect. You expect that public opinion is against bringing in people seeking asylum. No, they're actually for it at the moment. And that, at the moment, we almost seem to see in Europe a little bit of competition to take more people from Syria.
May I follow up on this, because you made a very important point, I think, interesting point, which is about the role of civil society, and we've seen that very much so in Germany also, of course, where, of course, Mrs. Merkel abroad gets all the credit, but the German society was also very much active in this. What would you say about this, Ulrike?
I've even heard that Angela Merkel has a moral leadership in Europe.
Well, as a German, I can say that it's interesting to note, as we could turn within a month from this is a scoop sort of hashtag on 13th of July to the help us Mummy Merkel sort of country, yeah? I mean, as a German, obviously I feel happy that in this crisis Germany is showing leadership. But perhaps the two are even related. Perhaps it's because Germany was so nasty on hashtag this is a scoop sort of Brexit stories that it couldn't afford another topic to be nasty on. Who knows? Yeah? Because there is this East-West divide, which has been mentioned a couple of times, there's obviously also a North-South divide in which the European Union should care about. And Germany has been really reluctant to care about the problems of the South in general. Yeah? And having these refugees now in the middle of Germany on a, let's assume, more or less calculated way that we can deal with them, given that the population is welcoming, might open a gate for Germany to achieve what Europe has been asking Germany for long, which is Germany taking responsibility in international relations. Much more than before. We do see civil society, mainly from Hungary to Austria to, really united and claiming for a more welcoming Europe. I think this is the nicest surprise we can see after 5 years of Euro crisis, that basically citizens are there questioning or calling for a more moral European policy.
But most of the people simply do not know what to think about. Just to tell you, I think that the majority of Poles haven't even seen a refugee.
In Dresden and Hoyerswerda and Heidenau, and where all these ugly things are happening, you're basically having no quota at all of refugees, and you have the aggression there. So there's probably a sort of societal problem of what is estranged is threatening you or frightening you the less you know it. Yeah.
In the world today, there are some 60 million refugees, plus tens of millions of people who would have a legitimate aspiration for asylum in Europe. And Europe will not be able to accommodate them all. So how many are too many? I find it quite fun that we are now sort of gushing over the public opinion when it comes to the refugees, which is heartwarming. It really is. But keep in mind that Europe is very skeptical to migration, and this sentiment has not been listened to. When Pew made a survey in 2014, they found out that only 7% of Europeans in the 5 biggest countries wanted more immigrants. My worry is that the current jubilant mood will turn into something far darker when people realize that there is no border fences in place, and that the current influx of refugees most likely is a more permanent situation. The European institutions that appear to be more interesting in clawing more sovereignty to themselves than actually resolving the refugee crisis. Seen from Brussels, it doesn't seem that there is any amount of refugees that are too many. We're seeing beggar thy neighbor policies, where countries are shuffling the migrants onwards to the next country, where they all end up in Germany. Germany is set to take 800,000 asylum seekers this year. It seems to me more likely that Europe will, nation states will splinter in mutual recriminations and anger at each other's policies as they put up national policies to man the walls again. And at the same time, there is also a chance that the populations of Europe will rebel against the system that created a crisis that it was not able to solve.
You come from a country which is a country of immigration, which has also a lot of very serious debates about immigration, and which has also built walls on the border to prevent immigrants, and where multiculturalism is also a very big debate. How do you see our crisis from where you are?
Immigration debates in the United States have very different sources than what's going on right now in Europe. The United States has right now about 11 million people inside the country, mostly Hispanic speakers, who are not citizens. That's 11 million illegals. We don't have a border fence along the Mexican frontier. We have the usual sort of border crossings and the occasional barbed wire hither and yon, but we don't have yet what Donald Trump wants to do, which is to build a new sort of Berlin Wall along the entirety of the U.S.-Mexico. That'll never happen. Because of Europe's relative absence of hard power, because if it's being from a security point of view, being sort of cradled in an Atlantic cocoon in which the United States made the key decisions and made the key investments, there's a tendency to sort of seek the moral high ground and to articulate these very, very high-minded principles. And on immigration, there are such principles, and they are in Germany. And then what happens is reality intrudes. And suddenly there's a circumstance beyond the control of Europeans, generated by factors outside, far outside of Europe. And then you have a clash between these very high-minded abstract moral abstractions on the one hand, and what people actually think and fear on the other. And you're going to get a political backlash, and it's going to be expressed in parties and outside, extra-parliamentary. There is civil society, and I think it's true that young people are far more magnanimously minded, but we'll see how long that lasts. Because, again, during fair weather, fair economic weather, It's easy to be magnanimous. And what I worry about is if there is a global recession deeper than the one that we experienced in 2007-8, then a lot of that smiley, happy faces we're seeing right now in Munich aren't going to look the same.
The Economist wrote just let them in and let them earn.
First, I mean, let's just recall the first sentence of the French Revolution 1789, which is human dignity is indivisible. Yeah? And I may repeat, human dignity is indivisible. And where you are born actually does not depend on you. In 600 post Jesus Christ, there was what we call in history books Völkerwanderung, yeah? Which is a very different word. Völkerwanderung is just that people tend to go where they can live better, and they always did so. And one discussion of the 21st century, I think, which is just that big on the horizon, is wealth distribution in the 21st century. And if we frame it as wealth distribution within the 21st century, the West so far has too much, and the West is the US and Europe. We use 80% of energy resources, we use 80% of water resources whatsoever, and I can make a whole sort of sentence here that much of the things happening in Africa, from Ethiopia to Iraq to Syria today, has a lot to do with Western allied policies in the last century and with externalization effects of perversive agricultural policy and so on and so forth.
I really don't want to be a pessimist. I would really like to be an optimist about this. I'm one of those who actually believe that migration makes states better and help foster new ideas and innovation. But we have to face up to the fact that large-scale migration into regions in economic crisis might have political adverse outcomes. And also this idea, open your hearts, you know, like reframe the discourse. It's not really about that. The thing is, when a refugee arrives in Poland or in Norway, they trigger a lot of rights because we have welfare states. In Norway, one single migrant from outside of Europe, low-skilled migrant, is calculated to cost 500,000 euros per head during their lifetimes, including what they pay in taxes when they get to work. And then you can do the maths.
And what does a Norwegian life cost during lifetime?
I'm not sure, but a lot less. The thing is
Less?
A lot.
Education?
Yeah, less. Yeah, less. Because Norwegians have much lower unemployment levels than migrants.
How do you explain that most post-communist countries have this very different position or reaction than Western European countries, and how will we get over this?
Comparing, for example, Poland to Norway, Poland is more or less in a situation as Norway was 70 or 80 years ago. At that time, Norway was one of the poorest among the Nordic states, and the emigration from Norway was a serious problem. Altogether, in the United States, you will find more Norwegians than in Norway. And the situation is quite similar. In other words, Poland is at the moment in a situation that young generation is looking for better life, for better education, etc., outside of the country. Now, for the first time, we are confronted how the society should be changed and accept, I would say, the new situation. And I would like to say that I was very disgusted by the reaction of the Hungarian leaders, especially that I do remember still what happened in '56 when 200,000 Hungarians in one day crossed the border to Austria, and they were treated, I would say, in totally different way than the Hungarians are treating now the refugees.
First, I'd like to say that I do not want to measure the cost of a life on a business cycle. I personally find this insane. The very theoretical construct of Europe is that we allow equality for market actors against the interest of citizens. We allow, in a common level playing field for market actors, that companies do shopping on wages, shopping on taxes, and the whole thing, whereas we we do not allow the basic principle of what is at the bottom of any state entity, which is political equality for all citizens. If Auschwitz was the thing that Europe needed to go over to survive, to find a to find the reconciliation with Auschwitz, or however you want to frame this, then I think the refugees are today the thing an dem sich Europa wird messen lassen, against which Europe will need to measure itself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.